Okay, so we've already talked about how to go from from standard to general form. But now we want to talk about the reverse. So when we have general form where it's all expanded out and we want to get it back to graphing form, and this is a lot more common because a lot of times you'll be given this equation, but you want to be able to graph it easily. You want to be able to see what's the center, what's the radius. And that's easiest if we get it back to this standard graphing form. So the steps here are, first of all, if there's a constant term, so if there's a term without a variable attached to it, that's c, we would move it to the other side of the equation. So I would subtract it or add it if it was negative. Get it to the other side of the equation. That's the first step. The second step is to complete the square for each the x and the y variables. So you've probably done completing the square before, but it has probably been a while, so we'll refresh your memory. Essentially what it is you are taking this a, dividing it by 2 and squaring it, adding it to both sides. B divided by 2, square it, add it to both sides. And what that does is it's going to allow us to set up a perfect square where we can factor it and make it look just nice and pretty like this. Then step 3 is to write each perfect square trinomial as a square of a binomial, so writing it like this, and then identifying the center and radius from there. So let me show you what that actually looks like in practice. Here's a reminder of what our forms are. Here's the steps. And then you'll see there we are given this general form of the equation. X squared plus 6x plus y squared minus 2y plus 6 equals 0. First thing we're going to do is to move the constant term to the other side of the equation. That's this 6 here. Subtract 6 to get it over to the other side. So I'm going to start us over here. And you'll notice they already have the x's grouped together and the y's grouped together. I'm going to leave some space after the x's and some space after the y's. This is just to allow us space to finish our completing the square in just a minute. So x squared plus 6x, y squared minus 2y, and then we have that equal to negative 6 at this point. We move that 6 over. The next step is, again, completing the square. So what you do is you take the number in front of x, divide it by 2, and square it. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. So what we do is we add 3 squared here, but you have to also add it to the other side of the equal sign. So do not forget about that or you're really messing with your equation. Remember, we can do anything to an equation as long as we do it to both sides. So if we're going to add 3 squared, we got to add 3 squared to both sides to balance it. Now, with the y's, the coefficient of y is negative 2. So we're going to do negative 2 divided by 2. That gives us negative 1. So we square that. And we're going to add that to both sides. So now, all we're going to do is factor. The nice thing here, guys, is you really don't have to do any work. These perfect square trinomials, once you have set it up, it factors the same every time. And it's simply going to be x here, and then whatever you got as your a over 2 here. So it's going to be x plus 3 squared. And you can FOIL that out and double check yourself. You're going to end up with x squared plus 3x, which gives you 6x, plus 3 squared. Boom. Same with the y's. You just do y and then whatever you were squaring, which was negative 1, y minus 1 squared. If you FOIL that out, you'll get y minus 1y minus 1y, which combines to minus 2y, and then plus negative 1 squared. Now we just have to simplify this side of the equal sign, which is going to be negative 6 plus 9 plus negative 1 squared is a positive 1, so just remember that when you're doing these. So you end up with 4. If you add those all up, you will get a positive 4. And guys, you're done there. The only thing you have to do now is identify the center and identify the radius. So the center, remember h, it's going to look like the opposite of what you see here. So since it's plus 3, h is a minus 3. And then the k, same thing. The sign is going to be opposite of what you see there. So it's going to be a positive 1. That's your center. And then the radius is the square root of whatever you see here. So 4 square root of 4 is 2. That's it. So don't overthink these guys. Basically, you're taking the coefficient of x, divide by 2 and square it. Coefficient of y, divide by 2 and square it. Make sure you do the same to both sides. Then simplify, simplify the right side, and then pull the center and the radius out.